Taking time to create a business takes guts, perseverance, and a thick skin. And of course, there is some luck in that mix, but it's not blind luck. It's when hard work meets opportunity. That's truly where luck resides. And those overnight successes, the ones that we all think about, well, they're not really there, actually, an overnight success. It's years of toil and sleepless nights grinding out their dreams. Now, maybe this is commentary is maybe setting some people off thinking, no, success should be easy, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is that our success is based on a few key things that we need to put into action in order for our outcome to be undeniable. And that is what my guest and I are going to talk about today, as well as a few of other important things. And before we get into that, we know that being a man today has never been more challenging. And so the pain we feel for many of us is real. It's a pain of loneliness and unworthiness. And then it's masked by our anger and our resentment. And it's all because we feel uncertain and afraid to take that next step. And so if you're tired and fed up with where your life is at, then I'm going to encourage you to start your hero's quest. It's where you can become more, accomplish more, and live more than ever before. Just go to members.theawakenedman.net and start your quest today. With that, let's get on with today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. Before we get started, let me ask you a couple questions. What would you say are the keys to your success? Is it guts, perseverance, or maybe it might even be luck? Listen, all of those things are definitely in the mix, because without them, your dreams never really get off the ground. Now, maybe you're saying, yeah, I have all those, but my business or my goals are still not coming to fruition. So what's going on? Well, today my guest shares a story about building a powerful company that is changing the lives of countless clients and their customers. So allow me to introduce my guest. Jonathan Rivera is, but to his friends, it's actually called JR. And he is the founder of the Podcast Factory, a man of deep integrity who lives by his core values of faith, family, fitness, and finances. And God gave us talents, he says, and we must make use of them to make the world a better place. That's exactly why he built the Podcast Factory. Welcome to the show, JR. How are things, brother?
I don't know, man. I'm impressed that you got through that intro in one shot. You're a pro, and I am stoked to be here. And I'm hoping that in the time that we have together, that maybe we can light up a few lives and make a few more men revolutionary. So let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. For sure. JR, in all the work here that we do with the Awakened Man, and especially on this podcast, we like to talk about everyone being on their own hero's journey or their own hero's quest. And so my opening question for you, my friend, is to tell us about that time when you faced a crisis. Maybe it was a crisis of faith. What did you do about it? And how did that experience shape you into the man you are today and the work you're doing?
I think that I'm a Catholic man. So I think that, we have crisis all the time that help us grow in our faith. And I mean, there's so many of them, but I can tell you about one of the most recent ones that made it crystal clear about the work and the mission that I'm doing was just walking around the lake. I live downtown here in Orlando, and we have a lake right here, and asking, praying, thinking, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I meant for? I know I'm meant for more. What is it? What is it? And I kept asking because I was frustrated. I did feel alone, and I wanted an answer. And as I'm walking, I get the strangest answer. It's something from scripture. As he walked around the Sea of Galilee, I'm going to butcher it. Okay. I'm not a theologian, but he saw Peter and Andrew, and they were fishermen. They were fishing. And he said, come after me and I will make you a fisher of men. I don't know. That's what came to me. And I'm walking around the lake and I'm saying, I'm doing it. This work that I'm doing at the Podcast Factory with my clients, helping them get their message out there to more people, uplifting messages, positive messages, bringing the light to people. I'm actually doing that work. And it made me more invigorated about what I do at the Podcast Factory. And that's bringing those positive messages to the people that need them so that they have light in their lives, so that they know that there's someone out there that's struggling with the same thing that can help them. And I know you do it too, because I've heard your show and it's like you're hitting hot buttons like every second. So you get it. And that was probably one of the biggest ones in the mission piece. I mean, there's so many others.
Man, I love that. What I really appreciate about that story is about taking that time to really listen and understand that you were meant for something more. And I think for men, too many of us live lives of quiet desperation, as Thoreau or Emerson had said. And I think that's so true. And that was part of my story, growing up and after my my culinary career ended, things really took a challenging turn. And so I like to talk with guys who had that moment of crisis, that moment of faith, whatever that looks like for them. So all of us can recognize that there is that still quiet voice inside of us if we're willing to take the time and listen and take some action. And now you've done that. You've taken incredible action with the Podcast Factory. But I want to talk a little bit more about how you have this idea that the customer is always wrong. And I really like the way you were framing this. And I was doing some research. So tell our audience a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, we live in a world where people are just messed up. Call it the microwave generation. They want instant satisfaction, and it's all about desire and what we want. I want this, I want that, because this commercial and that commercial, and because that guy has it, and they have that, and I want. And it's incredibly difficult to sell anybody on anything other than what they want, because most people are absorbed in their ego and their desires. And the reason why I say the customer is always wrong is because most times what you want is not what you need. And so for us who are running businesses, I have a service business. I can't sell you what you need. Every time I try to sell what people need, because I get on a call with people and I break down their business, their goals, what they're trying to do, where they're going, what they're doing now. I get into it. And I know once I look at the big picture, okay, so this, and this needs to be done, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because they don't want this, and that. They want a podcast, or they want to be the next Joe Rogan. So I have to sell them what they want and give them what they need. And if we learn to do that, it might sound a little misleading, but the fact is that if you're not getting these clients, if you're not closing these deals, then you don't have a chance to help this person, to shape their future, to get them where they want to go. So it is imperative that we frame whatever our offer is as what they want. But when we engage them, then start breaking it down into what they want. But really, here's what you need. You need more sales. You need more appointments. You need more leads. Those are the things people really need. You don't need to be Joe Rogan for that. Shocker.
Man, I just love how you frame that. I take copious notes when during the interview. So just so many truth bombs in there. And you talked about, you got to sell them what they want, but give them what they need. And I think as we think about that, we're all doing some form of sales, right? Doing podcasts, whether you're doing men's work, as I'm doing in my genre. We think about what is their needs, but really it's about triggering that want that they have in order for them to hear the need. And I think the way you frame that makes so much sense. And that's part of the challenge, I think. Also, you talked about, I talked about in the intro and in your bio, you have these four strong pillars, of faith and family, fitness, and finances. And I thought, if you don't mind speaking a little bit about those and how you've been able to put those into practice for yourself and for the work that you do with your clients.
So I've actually switched up because I had a mentor last year change my thinking. And this any of you listening out there, don't think the same as you did a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. We get set in our ways and this is what I believe. And then we stop growing. And so I have vowed to keep my mind open for when I hear things that make sense. And so one of them was this mentor I worked with who had me rearrange those. And of course I fought it a little bit in the beginning, but I can't argue with it because once I put it into practice, it made sense. So faith is at the top no matter what. For me, everything is for the glory of Jesus Christ, for the kingdom of God the Father, for our path there and bringing other men home, and so that they can bring their families home. So that doesn't change. But what changed was I used to have family in the second spot. And he's like, listen, think about your fitness. Think about how you eat, how you take care of yourself and all that. If you don't do any of that, then do you become a burden to your family? If you get ill health, if you're sick, if you don't have strength or energy? And I was like, I'm a family man. But good grief, he was right. Yeah. So part of that's why I had to flip them, because I have to take care of myself, my body. I have to take care of the way I eat, and I have to have energy and be a good example for my family and to do God's work. So it's now faith, fitness, then family, and then finances. And one of the things I used to say that didn't go over well when I flipped my pyramid was that finances were last. And I would tell people, well, work gets the leftovers of the day. And this has been a project I've been working on since June. We're on a podcast, so it's timeless, right? For the last 6 months, I was working on this idea of flipping the pyramid that I got from the very same mentor, where I put faith first, I put fitness second, and then family, and they all kind of intermingle together up there, and the leftovers go to work. And people would be like, the leftovers, so you're just giving junk to work? And I realized that was not the best way to put it. The best way to put it was that little slice that I have left, that little slice after I do all those other things, is going to be the most potent, the most powerful, the most intentional time I have. So nowadays, bro, I work. Like today, I'll work an hour and a half. Like this is kind of work mission kind of tied together, because we're doing discipleship and all that. But I have a couple client calls after this. I work maybe an hour and a half a day. But when I show up fully powered, because I took care of those other pieces. I've already been with my son, done homework, walked, praised God, had meals, everything. And I'm here with you now, bringing you everything I have and into the next couple calls as well.
Man, I just love that. What a great reframe as well. And it's so true. If we can't take care of ourselves, then how are we able to take care of our families? And again, it's another one of those things. It's just everything you're saying today, just resonating loudly for me, because I think, and I think back on my life and where the priorities went, and how we can be caught in a rut and not really understand that the day-to-day mundane things that we're doing is leading us to what we have. And so I always say in our work that I know somebody is ready to change. I know when I'm ready to change, when I'm ready to take responsibility for 3 things. The first thing is who I am. And that is really about looking at everything around me. And then also about where I am. Well, that's based on all the decisions, all the actions or lack of actions that I've taken, and then who I ultimately aspire to become. And it's really not about aspiring to becoming something, but it's about making a choice to do something different today. And I think that's really, another way to look at the framework that you've put forward. And I completely agree 100% that yesterday's values and yesterday's beliefs may no longer serve us. And so that leads me on to, you have also another idea about why you have this law that you call the law of borrowed beliefs, and how does that play into this conversation that we're having today?
I think you said it in the intro as we were beginning our discussion together about that feeling of unworthiness. And I think we all feel that. Maybe you want to call it imposter syndrome, or there's many other names for it, but we feel like we don't deserve certain things. And that's the way maybe we grew up. That's beliefs that we were given that maybe aren't our own. That's maybe what society says. I don't know where it came from, but we've all got it. And in tough situations, you feeling unworthy, unfit, unready, how do you break out of that? How do you release yourself so that you can move on to that next level? It's incredibly difficult. And one of the things that I figured out, and it started with my wife, when my real estate business failed, I lost everything, house foreclosed, no money in the bank. And I'm trying to rebuild. And in my mind, I have this little demon. See, who do you think you are? Who said that you could do this? Why did you think that you were worthy of all this? That little demon was just on my shoulder, nagging at me. And the only thing I turn around, I look at my wife, I call her a cupcake, and she's got these big, beautiful brown eyes. And And she's just looking at me and she believes in me. We got this. We're going to do this. And I'm like, you know how much debt I'm in? I don't know if you know, and I'm not going to tell you either, but she believed in me, and I had to borrow her belief in me to power me up at that time to be able to break through the plateaus. And I've experienced this over and over with mentors, with masterminds, with friends, people seeing things that you don't see in yourself and taking what they see, installing it in your heart, even if just temporarily, to believe it so that you can break through. And I found this to be the way to break through plateaus endlessly. Is somebody's always going to see something different in me. And if I can believe in that, I can be that.
Man, amen, brother. So true, so true. And again, I think there are times in our lives that it happens more often than we care to admit, that we do need somebody, we do need or have that other person's belief in us to help pull us through. And I think when we can get over the other limiting belief that I see with a lot of men, and myself included, is ideas that I can do it all by myself, or I can do it alone, the old lone wolf piece. And when we come from that perspective, then the challenge with it is that tape that plays in our mind, that recording that keeps going over and over again, just embeds more negativity, more untruths about who we are. And so being surrounded by mentors, you've talked about mentors a couple times, and having our spouse being that mentor for us in those moments of need, when we recognize that, we really don't have a lot maybe at that time, but we have somebody that believes so much in us that that's all that we need to pull us through those tough times. And so I think that really leads into really another topic that I find in men's work, and I noticed that you do as well, is this idea of how our reputation equals the things that we do. So talk a little bit about how that framework works with your work.
Yeah, the law of reps is what I like to call it. And I don't, it's so simple that you'll probably ignore it. But the fact is, we are what we repeatedly do. And I think maybe that was Aristotle or Plato, I don't know, one of the great philosophers that said that. So we are what we repeatedly do. Therefore, success is a habit, something like that. Like I said, I'll butcher all of these. I'll butcher all of them and try to give credit where credit's due. And you can look it up. But these are the things that are on my mind. And what I've been seeing lately, I study scripture every morning. And one of the things that I've been seeing a lot is about lies and dishonesty and little white lies, and how little white lies can turn into big lies, and how people embezzle $100 from their company, then 1,000, then 1,000,000, and now they're crooks. And it started so small. So we are what we repeatedly do. So we need to choose what we're doing. We need to choose the activities that are going to make us. And I'll just give you some of the things that I use. And this could change next year, so don't hold me to it. But I start the day in prayer. I start the day with a rosary. I start the day with the Bible. I start the day reading some Stoics to get some good ideas, to get some good fuel, to get something positive in my mind to start the day, something to think about, something to lead me in the right direction. So I read this stuff every day, so I make it a part of me. And we are what we do. If I eat pizza every day, I'm going to be a big fat pizza boy, right? That's a big dough boy. That's just the way it is. If you get up every day and you go work out, then you're going to be fit. And it's the same with the lies. It's the same with the truth. It's the same with integrity. You can choose your path, right or wrong. I'm not going to say what it is, but if you keep doing it, that's who you are. The good news is that with God's grace, he always forgives and welcomes us home with open arms, so we can always repent and do better. And so that's what I look at. I look at trying to do better, admitting my mistakes, reviewing the things I do. Like today, my son did something. Oh, dude, man, this morning we went through scripture, right? I was reading with him. We were doing all this Bible stuff, all this good, happy stuff. And he's laying on the couch with me. That's all cute and everything. And we finished, right? It was like 15 minutes or whatever of reading that we were doing. And he looks up at his mommy and he says, sausage and eggs. So I lost my mind for a split second. I'm like, are you kidding me? Does your mommy look like a slave? You don't talk to her like that. You act like a man and you go help her. After I just finished reading scripture with him. And I was like, hey, little guy, I'm sorry. Look, I didn't like what you said there, and I could have told you a better way. Will you forgive me? Yes, Daddy, I always forgive you. Will you? Okay, look, I want you to be a good man and I want you to be a helpful man. And the way that you were doing that just made it look like you didn't care about your mommy and you were being ungrateful. And I kind of lost it. So look, I'm not perfect. I'm sorry. And so there's always a chance to come back no matter how bad we've been. And I'm bad all the time.
Brother, we all have those moments. And what the takeaway I'm getting from from your last story there was really about the recovery of it and the consciousness to recognize when you had overstepped the lesson for your son. And I think, as he gets older, he's going to remember that recovery and how you went back and approached it more than he will remember the first part. And I think as fathers, we can take a lot of lessons from that. My children are in their early 30s, and so they're a little bit older. And I think back to when they were young and had how many more times I could have done that to have been able to reframe what had happened. And it took a while for me to get there through a lot of other work and other stuff. But today, as I work with men and work with myself, even today, that like none of us are perfect. And sometimes, I'm not very happy or very proud with how I've spoken with my wife. And as best that I can, try to look at that recovery to come back and apologize for how the message was delivered, but maybe not so much the message, because there was something there that was important that needed to be said. Could I find a better way to do that? And this, I think, is the key for all of us. Like we talk about, not just having, a strong faith as a foundation to help us go through, but also developing the skill sets. And it's really about taking a type of ownership that I talked about earlier. But you have take it to a little bit further. You're actually talk about creating a culture of extreme ownership. So tell us a little bit about how you're implementing that in your life.
Yeah, it's been, man, I was addicted to that book. That's Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership. And the first time I read that book, it blew my mind. And I read it 8 times in that year. And then I started sharing it with everybody, sharing it with all the people in our company, sharing it with my wife. But I think the most basic piece of that is the accountability, And the example I just gave you was owning my mistake, owning the way I approach that. And we do that at our house. We do that in our company, with our clients, with our team. We want a culture of people who own whatever they're doing. And it could be the mistakes. It also could be the glory. You did something awesome, own that as well. But we want to really, it comes down to integrity, doesn't it? And that's an overused, overplayed word, but doing what you say you're going to do. And that's something that we live by. And so that example that I gave you of being a good Christian, asking for forgiveness and then coming back and giving it another shot. I live that every day, and I live that example every day. I screw up. I told him, man, I screw up all the time. But I also look at how do I come back? And that's one of the talks I had with my son recently as I'm trying to teach him, man, he's a good kid. This kid loves God. He lights up a room when he walks in. He's beautiful. And even with all that, man, sometimes kids fall off the rails, right? We had a couple days or a week or something where he was off the rails. Just like, who is this kid? We didn't even know who he was. And it was getting serious. It was getting serious where I had to be angry because the way he was talking to my wife, the way he was talking to me, even to his grandma who does nothing but spoil him, I was losing my mind. And I talked to my wife and I'm like, hey, what do I do? What do I do? I don't know. I don't know what to do, but I do know what to do. And this is something we can all do. Pray for answers and listen. We talked about this earlier. And so I did it. I was at my wit's end, and I prayed that night. I prayed the next day. My whole rosary was dedicated to this. And then he comes up with this thing. Hey, Daddy, I think I've chosen the wrong path, and I'm going to pray to God to put me on the right path.
Oh man,
it touched my heart, man. I almost, it just touched my heart that so quickly my prayers were answered, right? So quickly. But he came up with this. I didn't tell him that. He said, I'm on the wrong path. God told me that I can get on the right path. And that's when I jumped into look, It's never too late. God always loves you. He's going to welcome you with open arms. No matter how bad we are, we can come back from it. That's the example, right? That's own the mistake that you made. Daddy, I've been on the wrong path. And then do something about it. I prayed and now I can get on the right path. Isn't that crazy?
Unbelievable. And how old is your son?
9.
Oh my goodness. My goodness. Outstanding. Outstanding. You know, as a 9-year-old has a greater depth of understanding than many adults, you know, and I say that in all truth because a lot of adults, we've been beaten down for so long that we can't hear that voice. We don't take the time to understand. And here's a young man, you know, obviously following in yours and God's footsteps, and has an opportunity to recognize, to hear the voice say, I've been choosing the wrong path. It's just so powerful. Just love that.
It's beautiful, man. It touches my heart. I journal about all this stuff. I have so many moments with him, and I'm happy to be able to share them with you.
Yeah, I love that. Let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about your work with the Podcast Factory. How did that come to be, and how is it serving the world today?
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was just passion. I got online in, I don't know, around '08. I was trying to diversify because I told you my real estate business failed. I started rebuilding it. It's successful again now. And I wanted to have something else. I wanted to have another stream of income. I wanted to have some security. And at the time I got online, you had to be a thought leader, and people still use that phrase, thought leader. But to be a thought leader, you had to blog. And dude, I barely, I mean, I didn't graduate high school. I'm not writing anything. And I discovered podcasting, and I was just ahead of the game at that time. And I had some people, some mentors, some people who had guided me on the right path, who had helped me a ton, and who were doing good work. And I felt like, man, you're doing such good work and you helped me out a ton. I bet if we get you out to more people, if we record some conversations, we can help a ton more people. And that's how it started. Me hanging with my friends who had helped me, recording shows, putting them out there because I had the technical skills to do it. And before long, in masterminds, at events, people were coming up to me. I heard you doing a show with this guy or that guy. How do you do that? Can you do it for me? And I realized, okay, this is a business. This is a business. Okay, wait. Back up one second. Not that she's going to hear this, but it wasn't my idea. It was Cupcake's idea. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I think you're right. This could be the business. And that's what we did. We opened up our doors the Podcast Factory started in 2013, me hanging with my friends. In 2015, we opened it up to the public to be able to do shows for people as an agency. And ever since then, we've helped 122 experts launch their shows to eager audiences. And I'm looking for people that are doing good work. I'm looking for people with a mission, with a purpose, people that if we could just connect them with more folks, they could help them too. And so I'm always, I bring people apply to work with me, and I want to be in love with your mission. I want to be a part of that. I want to feel like in some way that we are bringing God's light to people. That's my own bias. I got the cross on. I'm a Christian man. I want to bring good messages of light and positivity in this dark world. And so I get to do that every day. And I jump out of bed. I jump out of bed knowing that when I talk to this person, that person, I help this person connect, that we are doing something, because people talk, right? People, the world's bad. It's such a bad place. Things are so negative. They don't do anything about it. And I get to do something about it every single day with the people I work with.
Man, love that transition from going from the real estate business into, recognizing that you had a piece there of all this knowledge that you were surrounded with, and starting a podcast. And in 2013, it's still pretty new. Podcasting was still really, really new. So to even, like you said, being ahead of that curve and stepping into that space. And now today, opening it up as an agency. But I was sitting there listening to you tell that story, and I'm just thinking there's got to be some characteristics though that you look for in clients that you're working with, and the ones that ultimately become successful in what they're doing, whatever that their definition of that looks like, and the ones that tend to struggle. So what are some of the characteristics that you're finding that really make it worthwhile for someone to dive into doing this work?
It's simple, man. Message, mission, and purpose. And what I look for is for people that actually want to make a difference. And in fact, I spoke to one of my clients yesterday. In fact, I was coaching her on her interviewing, And she asked me, she's like, well, just getting started with all this, and how do I know when I'm doing it right? And I hadn't really thought about it that much, but I had to give her an answer, right? I'm the professional. And I told her, when you're doing it right, when you get off that call and you have more energy than when you got on it. And she's on the call interviewing people because that's her curious spirit, her curious nature. And she wants to bring that out and help the listeners who, for her, it's young women who are advancing in the career world. And she's bringing experienced women to share their stories. And she comes off of that call uplifted. I said, that's how you know you're doing it right, because your listener is going to be uplifted. And so that's kind of what I look for: message, mission, and purpose. The other part is they have to have a business, right? We're not Joe Rogan. We're not selling ads. We're selling whatever we're selling, whether it's our consulting, whether it's coaching, whatever our services are. It has to feed that. Otherwise, I think it's a waste of time. So message, mission, and purpose to ultimately feed your business and your soul.
And that's great, especially getting those three in sync, right? That ultimately then really gives you an idea of the commitment and of the how dialed in that potential client is. Now let's just look at that from a different perspective as well. As an individual, as we wake up every day and look to take on the challenges of the day, do we have a mission? Do we have a message? And what is our purpose? And if we don't have that to begin as individuals, then we're going to struggle in life in anything that we tend to put our minds to. And so that the idea that looking at this, not just from a client perspective, but how we can embed that into our lives. What do we stand for? What are we willing to do? And that's why I talk about in the introduction about today, how men are struggling and how we tend to struggle because we don't know what that next step is. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. You talk about why we must stop waiting for the right time. And I think that's such a big challenge today. So tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that and how you're implementing it.
Yeah, that's a fun one. And it was as you're saying it back to me, it reminds me of the first great step I took, like the first big investment I made into having my own coach and consultant. Because I've done plenty of info products, courses, books, all that stuff. But there was this one moment where I was staring down what was it? It's about a $40,000 investment to join this program. And before that, I mean, I didn't really think I could ever do anything like that. Sure, info product, $1,000, group coaching, $500, all those little things. I invested in all those things. But I remember on the call with the guy, and he was a friend because I had been around him for a while, and I'm just thinking, maybe I'll wait until this happens and wait until that happens. And basically I'll wait for the right time. And he told me, and it's true. And I've seen it in my life, and you probably have too. There is no right time. The time is right now. When you know you need to make the change, when you have the opportunity to go from where you are to where you want to be, or to work with the people you want to work with, or to do anything that's going to take you out of where you are, there is no right time. The time is right now. You have to take action. And that's where most people get stuck. They never take that action. I took the action and it hurt. Okay. It hurt when I had to explain it to my wife, and I had to make sure that I had the money to pay for it. And it was very scary. But on the other side of that, it opened me up to what I was capable of. I was a new person after I did that. And because of that big move, other big moves unlocked. We went from the suburbs to living downtown. I went from giving a little bit to giving a lot. All these things opened up for me when I took that great action that was so scary. And I think most of us will get stuck in not taking any action, waiting for the right time. And the fact is that you might die with your music still in your heart if you don't take that action. And I'm not saying that every action is the right action. Some you win, some you lose. But I know that in making those investments and taking action when I feel the pull or the spirit or whatever has paid off for me. And that's why I say there is no right time. The time's right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think, that what a great example, right? Looking at investing in, in a, 5-figure program for yourself and for your business. And some of us may not do that, may not make that choice. A 4-figure, a 3-figure, regardless of where you're at. The point of being is that what we're talking about here is just to take some action. And one of the things I listened to a few podcasts, and I always liked what Ryan Michler would say with his Order of Man work, and he'll just say, stop reading books and just implement something. And it's so true, right? I big reader. I enjoy reading books, but how much of that stuff are we actually implementing? Nothing wrong with reading and taking a course or doing something, but are you taking any action? Are you implementing at least something towards it? Or is it just another thing to put on the dial, to put on the shelf that we haven't really taken any action towards? And so absolutely stop waiting and just take action today, and life truly will change.
It's in the Bible, man. Faith without works is fruitless. We can't just read the word and think about the word. We actually have to take action, be disciples, do things. This is not stuff I came up with. This is a 4,000-year-old life instruction manual. Okay. You can read it yourself, available everywhere.
That's right. At your local bookstore and more.
Go to a hotel. It's in the drawer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man. Exactly. Along the way, you must have come across, obviously you've talked about already about a few mentors and people that, that you've leaned on, but what would you say has been the best piece of advice that you've received, and how has it served you?
There's so many good ones. I'll go back to when this question comes up. I'll reframe it. What would you tell your 20-year-old self? Is kind of what I'm thinking as you're asking me that question. And God gave us 2 ears and one mouth, so we listen twice as much as we talk. And I try to tell my son that, although he's not there yet. I found that the greatest gift that I have been given is the gift to listen to people. And I don't just mean listen and wait for my chance to cut in and talk. I mean, really listen to people, listen to what they're saying, listen to what they're not saying, but listen to them. And this, if you're an introvert, let me tell you the secret to networking. You want to be the best networker on the planet? I'm an introvert too. I don't like going to networking events. And this is one of my favorite. I'll give you a formula. I'll give you a formula. Ask a question. It's the ALR formula for successful networking. Ask a question. Listen to what they say. And I mean really listen. Listen to what they say. And then repeat it back to them in your own words. Let me tell you something. You won't have to say anything if you go anywhere using this formula other than ask a question and let people talk, repeat. Ask another question. You do that, they think you're the most interesting person in the world because you let them talk about themselves the entire time. And so I have found that to be one of my most powerful tools, is that in my house, even at my work, in most places I go, I'm typically the best listener because I don't want to talk about myself. I want to hear about them. And that opens up a whole world of opportunity for me.
That's incredible. We've been chatting here all day today, and this just been truth bomb after truth bomb. And that's another one. And there's a saying that when the right word comes from the right person at the right time, your life will change. And if folks get an opportunity to re-listen to this podcast, there's minute by minute that is happening through this entire I'm here today. JR, just totally love it. Just love what the stuff that you're giving us today.
Oh man, thank you for the opportunity, Alan. I'm grateful to be a part of this. I'm grateful that you have shared this time with me, and I feel honored, man, because you've done so many great interviews that hopefully the time we spent together is fruitful for you and for you guys out there who are listening to us.
I'm more than sure that that's going to be the case. And so as we're getting close to wrapping up here, I just want to, exit with this last question, I should say, is that of everything that we've spoken about, and maybe we didn't get a chance to touch on something, what would be the one piece of advice you'd like our listeners to take with them?
I want to go back to that piece that we just spoke about. I didn't know that was going to come up, but the faith without works is fruitless. And we can talk about that. If you go back and listen to the interview, there's so many times where took some faith, took some action, things happen. That's the secret behind Think and Grow Rich. It's like having the idea, thinking about it, having the faith that it's going to happen, and then doing work to make it happen. I think that's the one for all of us. Is faith without works is fruitless. So yes, learn, yes, read, yes, do. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. That's where things happen.
Man, just love that. What a great way to wrap up our conversation today. I just want to say, brother, thank you so much for being on the show. And you've been able to really to give us an opportunity that we can look at how we can take not only just extreme ownership in our life, but to have faith in our works and build a life worth living. And so if men are interested in getting a hold of you and participating in your work, maybe they have a podcast that they're working on and they need some help with, or maybe just even getting some more truth from yourself to help them lead better lives, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Number one, if you want to lead a better life, you need to get better thinking around you. And maybe it's through this podcast, right? If that's happening for you right now, leave a rating, review, let Alan know he's doing a good job. Listen to other shows. And then if you want to get other perspectives, different outlooks, other angles on what's good, what's right, what's true, what's beautiful, thepodcastfactory.com. Check out our client showcase. In there's 80 or 90 different shows, different hosts, different ideas, different angles that you can learn from. And if you've got a message, a mission, a purpose, and you need to get to more people, and you're looking at podcasts as a way to do that, thepodcastfactory.com. And there's a little book a call link on there. I'm happy to jump on there, give you any advice I can, and I will sell you what you want and I'll give you what you need.
Oh, man, just love that. Thanks so much, JR, for being on the show. Really appreciate it, brother. Have a good one.
Thank you.